Good morning, everyone. Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the Organization of American States, distinguished permanent and alternate representatives, representatives of observer states, colleagues of the General Secretariat, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for being here today. As a proud Belizean mestizo, which by its definition entails that I have Mayan ancestry in me, I feel blessed to have been exposed to indigenous cultural influences that have enriched my upbringing. Some of the memories from my childhood and my youth are of the time spent in the rural areas in the north of Belize, and of the time spent with my grandfather and my father, and the things I learned from them. I also vividly remember the tastes of traditional indigenous foods, the customs, the beliefs, and the practices in the rich tapestry of cultures, including Maya, in the north of Belize. Distinguished delegations, this and other countless cherished memories is what we pay homage to here at the House of the Americas as we launch the 6th annual observance of the Inter-American Week for Indigenous Peoples under this year's theme, Indigenous Youth as Agents of Change for Self-Determination in the Americas, Intergenerational Connections. Más adelante les voy a contar un poco más del norte de Belice y cómo era vivir en el mundo maya, en el corazón al sur de Yucatán, en el norte de Belice. This year's commemorative events will be marked by a series of both in-person and virtual activities designed to showcase the transformative role of young people as catalysts for positive change in their societies and to serve as custodians of ancestral knowledge. Through the power of the intergenerational connections, the transfer of indigenous knowledge between an elder, which may be in the form of a loved one or a community leader, and a young person, creates an unyielding and timeless bond that aids in the cultivation and fortification of indigenous peoples' identity across all our societies. En este contexto, celebramos la Semana Interamericana de este año con un enfoque renovado en la preservación de la cultura e historia de los pueblos indígenas de nuestro hemisferio. Ellos, como portadores originales de estas tierras y verdaderos custodios de su longevidad, merecen nuestro homenaje. Desde la tundra norte de Canadá, pasando por el archipiélago de islas en el Caribe, hasta el punto más astral de Argentina, su fortaleza y perseverancia tenaz, aún en los momentos más oscuros de nuestra historia, han sido precursoras de algunas de las primeras innovaciones y logros en nuestro hemisferio. No podemos negar las terribles atrocidades e injusticias que han ocurrido y a veces continúan afectando a nuestras poblaciones indígenas. Se estima que los pueblos indígenas constituyen casi el 10% de la población de nuestro hemisferio y que el 45% de ellos vive en la pobreza. En muchas de nuestras sociedades, los pueblos indígenas están sobrerepresentados en los datos socioeconómicos relacionados con grupos con acceso limitado a atención médica asequible, educación de calidad, empleo digno y servicios básicos. Nuestros pueblos indígenas son reconocidos por su relación sostenible con el medio ambiente y por lo tanto con nuestro planeta. Son los principales cuidadores de nuestros bosques y entorno natural. Sin embargo, están afectados de manera desproporcionada por el cambio climático. Es nuestro deber buscar medidas para corregir estas desigualdades e injusticias del pasado y trabajar juntos para forjar un futuro de inclusión y aceptación. Ladies and gentlemen, the Organization of American States is committed to providing a platform for the indigenous peoples and to amplify their voices on the causes and interests that are important to their communities. In that connection, and in accordance with the plan of action of the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which urges the organization to, open quotes, to promote their traditions, recognize the value of their languages, transmit their history, and draw attention to their contributions in different fields, end of quotes. The Inter-American Week for Indigenous Peoples was established in February 2018 by the member states of the OAS. Since its inception, my office, in collaboration with member states and other areas of the General Secretariat, have worked tirelessly to celebrate this week each year around August the 9th, in tandem with the observance of the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. Permítame tomar un momento para destacar algunas de las actividades que tendrán lugar aquí en la sede, en nuestros respectivos estados miembros, a través de nuestra red de oficinas nacionales y también en formato virtual para las celebraciones de este año. Primero, a lo largo de la semana, aquí en el Salón de Cultura de Marcus Garvey, se presentará una exhibición organizada por el Museo de Arte de las Américas, en colaboración con la Biblioteca Colón y los Estados miembros, el cual mostrará obras de arte, literatura y proyectos cinematográficos indígenas. Les invitamos a tomarse un tiempo para explorar la colección. 2. El miércoles habrá una sesión especial del Consejo Permanente para conmemorar el Día Internacional de los Pueblos Indígenas del Mundo, que se observará bajo el tema de la semana. 3. El viernes tendremos una edición especial del programa Una charla con la OEA, un evento virtual en vivo que contará con panelistas que abordarán el tema Conexiones intergeneracionales, el papel de la gastronomía en la preservación de las costumbres tradicionales y el fortalecimiento de la identidad indígena. Las oficinas de la Secretaría General en los Estados miembros también organizarán eventos culturales en sus respectivos países. Las actividades virtuales de la semana incluyen el Rincón de Lectura Infantil y Juvenil, una colección de títulos de libros que ilustran el conocimiento y los logros de los pueblos indígenas y promueven las conexiones intergeneracionales y la transmisión del conocimiento ancestral. Además, se destacarán perfiles de personalidades indígenas, particularmente de jóvenes indígenas que están ayudando a cultivar y mantener las tradiciones ancestrales. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's celebration encourages us to reflect on our role as purveyors of ancestral knowledge and recipients of traditions which were transmitted to us by our elders. It is irrefutable that a people without a known history will remain tethered to an unclear path towards self-fulfillment and autonomy. We must continue relying on our fraternal community of elders to share the true history and customs of our respective ancestral identities. The accurate depiction of the history and the current realities of our indigenous populations must be promoted. We look to our elders as a fount for edification and self-awareness, and we challenge our youth to continue fighting for the upliftment of our societies and an inclusive and equitable world. I wish to pause here to say a very special thanks to the member states for their constant support in the planning and execution of the week. As these events are not budgeted for in the regular fund, please allow me to give special recognition to the permanent missions of Canada, Guyana, and the United States for their financial contributions, without which several of the activities of this week would not have been possible. My thanks also to all the secretariats of the General Secretariat who have collaborated with my office, as well as our representatives in the national offices who have organized activities in their respective member states. We value your steadfast support and commitment. Lastly, I would like to recognize the staff in my office who worked tirelessly to prepare for the week's activities, and a very special recognition to Kendall Belial, who was largely responsible for planning most of these activities. There will also be other events, one organized by the Mission of Mexico in the showing of a film during the week. We also have the participation of the cultural presentations later this morning. And so we wish to give them all a very, very warm thank you, our appreciation to you. I told you in the beginning that I would tell you a little about growing up in the north of Belize, in the rural areas. So, my father was a school teacher, a primary school teacher. I have two other brothers and two sisters. The three boys are older. And as we were growing up, we were all going to school. But during the summers and sometimes during the weekends, either my grandfather or my father would take us to the farm. And the reason for this was, okay guys, you will go to school, you will receive an education, but if that does not work out, you will be able to work and provide for yourselves, because none in my family will end up begging or stealing. So we grew up like that, and I remember going to the farm weekends and during the summer, and the things that you learn growing up. I have this vivid memory of preparing the land for planting. At the time, slash and burn was practiced, not so much anymore. It's not very good for the environment. But they would cut the bush, the forest, and wait until it dries up before it is burnt. And it's not as easy as it sounds. There is some knowledge and science that goes to it. You don't just set it on fire. You have to wait until it's properly dried up. And then either my grandfather or my father would take some time to decide where the wind was blowing from. And the reason for that was very simple. If you burn it and it's not ready for burning, or you don't know what you're doing, only the leaves will burn. And then you end up with all the big trunks and the branches. And you have additional work. You have to pick those up, pile them, and set them on fire. So it's double work. So you have to be careful. But that was not all. So after it was ready for burning, and it was decided where the wind was blowing, we would set it on fire. And I always wondered when I was growing up, some of the practices that went along with it. And after we light it on fire, led by my grandfather and my father, we would all start whistling, a special whistle coming from the Mayas, calling for the wind. And last week when I was preparing for this event, I was thinking, is this still done? So I called one of my uncles who lives in the north of Belize. He's a cane farmer. And I asked him, is this still done? And he said, of course. Even when we go and burn our cane fields prior to harvesting, we still whistle everybody. And he says, even the migrant workers that come from Guatemala, from El Salvador, all of them also know this particular whistle, which basically is coming down from the Mayas. So, if you allow me, I hope I don't get a stage fright. I would like to try it so that you know what I'm talking about. After we light the fire, led by my grandfather, we would all start going. The really amazing part is that it always worked. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my signal honor to launch the 6th Inter-American Week for Indigenous Persons and to thank you for joining us today and virtually. We look forward to your continued support for our activities. Muchas gracias.